Post Time with Bobby G, Mary Rappolini, and Chris Crestik. Post Time. I'm Felix Taverna. I'm looking forward to a great run for the Kentucky Derby. Post Time. We'll get you there. We'll tell you every inch of track that we have to lay down in order to get to the winning Post Time.
As they arrive into the final furlong. They're off.
Post Time.
And they're into the stretch. We're coming down to the wire.
We produce it from 50 Way Studios in Toledo, Ohio. I'm Felix Taverna. Post Time. Can't wait. Holy Toledo, we are here from Southern California, and welcome to Post Time. I'm Felix Taverna. The run to the Kentucky Derby is right in front of us. 45 days until the first Saturday in May, and boy, do we have a great lineup for you today. First, we'll go to Bobby G, and then we'll check in with Mary Rappolini, but our very special guest is going to be joined as well, and her name is Donna Barton Brothers, and boy, if you know anything about horse racing, you know how big of a role she played for the D. Wayne Lucas barn. But let's get Post Time underway here on this week in March, and let's go to Los Angeles to check in with Bobby G. Bobby G, welcome to Post Time.
Felix, it's always a treat to be on the air with you. I'm looking forward to talking to our guests, and the world is awaiting what we have to say about the most exciting 2 minutes in horse racing and maybe in sports. Something truly to look forward to, and I can't wait to get down and discuss it with you and our guests.
Let's go to Arkansas, Hot Springs, Arkansas, to be exact. One of my favorite people on this land, a DRF correspondent for the Daily Racing Form. That's what DRF is all about. Her name is Mary Rappolini, and she's joining us on Post Time. A happy Wednesday to you, Mary. Is Mary there? We're going to, this has been such a thorn in the side.
Deja vu all over again.
Yes, but let's go to our guest, Donna Barton. You know, Donna Barton Brothers has been a friend of mine for a long time. I go back to the mid-90s with her when she was the workout girl, the number one workout girl for D. Wayne Lucas. And not only was she a workout specialist, but she was a great jockey in her own right. Her mother was a jockey, and Donna and I became very good friends. And one of the major reasons why I asked Donna to be on here is because this week we saw the passing of Serena Song at the age of 33. Donna not only rode Serena's Song in her second race, but she was aboard Serena's Song the final time that Serena's Song ever ran in a race. And she's joining us from her native Kentucky, I do believe. And Donna, thank you so much for being here.
Felix, it's my pleasure. I always like talking about horses, whether it's Derby horses or some of the ones that we love and we'll never forget. A filly like Serena's Song, just such an incredible filly. And I felt really honored to have been a little tiny part of her life. But she was just a really unique filly in so many ways. And I could talk about that at length, but you'll have to let me know how much you want to know about her.
Oh, I want to know everything because, you know, she garnered $3 million plus back in the mid-90s. She was born in 1993, the son of Rahi. And I remember Robert and Beverly Lewis taking ownership and trained by the great, the late D. Wayne Lucas. And you probably have more stories than most because you not only got her ready, you were a big part of her development. What kind of special equine was she?
Well, first of all, she loved to run. She loved to go fast. And I think that's the case with many thoroughbreds, right? They like to go fast and they are naturally competitive. And so we typically don't train them to compete. We train them to listen to us. And she was a filly who was just so gung-ho at all times. And so I'll give you an example. When I would work her in the morning, one of the things that I would have to do is keep her off the fence to begin with. So let's say we were going to go 5 furlongs and Wayne wanted to go on 101, then I would have to keep her like, 6 off the fence to start. And I would just start to just get her closer and closer, inch by inch to the fence. And the closer I'd get to the fence, the faster she'd go. If I moved a finger, she would take off. If I tapped her with a riding crop on her shoulder, she would take off. And so what I would do to get her to pick it up just a little tiny bit is I would just sniffle, because then she was so in tune and she would think, was that a smooch? Did you just smooch? And so she would pick it up just a little tiny bit. And she's the only horse I've ever done that with. That was that sensitive that I had to figure out a way to give her a cue that was a really subtle cue that only she would pick up. And the other thing is that I noticed, Gary Stevens rode her in most of her races. And I noticed when he would use the riding crop on her that she showed resistance. And I pointed that out to Wayne. We were watching a replay one day and he agreed. And after that, he told Gary not to ever hit her again. And then oddly enough, in the very last race of her career, I'm on her. And I think it's something like, it's less than 2 weeks after she'd run in the Breeders' Cup. And really what he was trying to do in that race was get the wins record for a filly at the time. I mean, for the money earned record, the money earned record for a filly. And she only had to finish second to get that done. And so oddly enough, I ended up going to the whip late in that race just to hold on for second because I knew we wanted that. And then if you look at the trip line in there, it says something along the lines of that she resisted urging from the whip late. Those trip notes are short, so it's definitely more concise than that. But she was just so generous. She would give you everything that she had anyway. And so if a rider went to the riding crop with her, I think she took it as an insult.
When I look back and when you look back during that special time during the 90s, Gene Klein was a major owner for D. Wayne Lucas. D. Wayne was on top of his game. He really had the who's who. When you went to work every morning to see the stock, the caliber of horses that you tended to, you must have been in seventh heaven. That had to be the who's who in the Hall of Fame of any barn.
Well, keep in mind, I was a jockey, right? And so I rode some horses for Wayne, but I didn't go to work at Wayne's barn every morning. I worked all of his best horses. And that came about because the top riders that he was riding were Gary Stevens, who was California-based, Jerry Bailey, who was in New York, and Pat Day, who was in Kentucky but didn't do morning work. And so the way for me to work my way into his barn was to offer to work horses in the morning. And what he found was that I had a good clock in my head and that horses and I got along really well. We liked each other. And so it helped me work his way into his barn. I rode a lot of the 2-year-olds in their first races because, again, back to Pat Day, he didn't necessarily want to ride those horses in their first races. And so it really helped me, but at the same time, it helped Wayne. It was a very symbiotic relationship. And so, yeah, there was a point when you look at some of those horses that, we would have a morning where we would, within a 2-year period of time there, he had in the barn, and with me working them, horses like Tabasco Cat and Timber Country and Prince of Thieves and Honor and Glory and Grindstone, Thunder Gulch, Serena's Song, Flanders. The names just go on and on. And it was a really fun time to be a part of Wayne Lucas's stable.
Well, he trusted you and you were his go-to girl during a very crucial time. Tell us a little bit about the work ethic of one D. Wayne Lucas.
Well, the way that I got into his barn was by showing up every morning at about 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was the only rider, I think, who just showed up day after day and took the no for an answer. And then one day he put me on a horse. And so I played to his work ethic by showing up every day and working as hard as any jockey that was out there. But Wayne was indomitable. He, no telling what time he got to the barn. I never did beat him to the barn, I can tell you that. But one day I asked him, a lot of trainers are in a bad mood. You go around all the different barns and most of the trainers are in a bad mood. And Wayne was never in a bad mood. And one day I asked him, Wayne, how do you stay so upbeat all the time? A lot of these trainers are just not in a good mood. And he said, Donna, right now I have 210 horses under my command at the different tracks around the country. He said, not only am I going to get bad news every day, I'm going to get bad news multiple times a day. I get to decide how I'm going to handle that bad news. And I'm not going to let it take me down. He said, my attitude is going to be contagious with the people in my barn. And the attitude of the people in the barn is going to be contagious to my horses. And so for me, it's important to keep my attitude up. And that's what I choose to do, which I thought was remarkable because as a jockey, you go through so many highs and lows too. And so I took that same mindset into my own playbook. Even a successful jockey wins 22% of the time. So you lose, 80% of the time, right? 78% of the time. So mostly you lose. And you have to make sure that one of the things Wayne would say is, a good athlete will shake that off and then come right back out. And so you have to shake off those losses and come back out with a winning attitude because your horse picks up on your energy. And Wayne was, he was the master of that.
You are one beautiful young lady, Donna Barton Brothers. You're like a great bottle of wine. You get better with age. And, I followed your whole entire career, and I really marvel at what you represent because this was a man-dominated sport in getting into a barn like D. Wayne Lucas. But one thing I remember about D. Wayne Lucas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, he came from the quarter horse industry where he was a quarter horse trainer. And when he came into the thoroughbred, he wasn't well liked by the others because he dazzled, he was dapper. He always wore suits that looked like he just came out of a Madison Avenue, New York commercial. His barns were well manicured with plants and shrubs and flowers, and he did it completely a different way. And the other trainers would have looked at him and said, like, who is this guy trying to come into our territory? But he did, and he remained the same. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would totally agree with that. And I think in the beginning, he didn't care who liked him. He wasn't there to make friends. He was there to be successful. And if he had to change the game to do that, he would change the game to do it. He started off by just trying to win the classic races, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, the Belmont Stakes, pointed for those races, bought horses to point for those races. And he was the one who really made those races become, prior to Wayne Lucas coming on the scene, the Kentucky Derby didn't have a 20-horse field every year, right? So he was part of the impetus for that. And then Baffert carried that torch a little further. But I think once his success sort of took flight and people started to get to know him, and then they realized that they liked him, things started to change. He started to change the way he behaved, and people started to change the way they felt about him. And then, he became the coach. He had the nickname of coach because he'd been a basketball coach. He told me, it was a funny story. He said the reason why things didn't work with his first wife, who was Jeff's mom, is because she married a basketball coach and a teacher and ended up with a horse trainer, right? And so he started off as a coach, and he always had that mindset. And so I think that, once he started to weave his way into the fabric of horse racing, and trainers and owners and people realized they were going to have to accept him, the more you knew Wayne, the more you liked him, because you could see first and foremost that he was a horseman. He was actually a bit of a horse whisperer. Tom Hammond, I'm reading his book right now, which is a great book. He was the host of our NBC shows for so long. And he tells a story in there about when he was at Keeneland, and he was working for Keeneland for the sales company. And there was a yearling that was being very difficult to handle in the barn area. And 3 different people had tried getting a hold of the shank and trying to get the horse to calm down, and it just wasn't working. He wasn't having it. And then Wayne Lucas, who was little known at that time, walked up and said, "May I give it a try?" And, the handler couldn't hand him over soon enough. Like, "Sure, you take him." And he said that Wayne stood there with the horse, and he didn't pull on the shank. He didn't reprimand him in any way. He just looked to be having a sort of a conversation with the horse, but without moving his lips. And then moments later, he just dropped the shank, and the horse just stood there and didn't do anything. And Wayne actually told me that story, and I had heard it, a very similar version from Wayne. And then Wayne told me when he told me his version of it, that then he walked over to the horse's withers and just ran his hand down the horse's withers, down his back a little bit, and walked around him a little bit. And the horse was perfectly calm after that. So I think what happened was that people in horse racing did see that he was a horseman first and foremost, a salesman second. And so they started to realize that maybe they could learn something from him. And certainly all the riders who rode for him knew that they could learn something from him. And then he became, Jay Privman wrote a really good article on him right after his passing, and said he became avuncular, right? He became like everybody's uncle, and everybody just revered and admired him for so many reasons. I mean, he brought up so many people through his, the assistant trainers who came up through his barn and through his, just the way he did things. And so anyway, yeah, he became a revered and beloved figure in the sport, but he didn't start out that way, that's for sure.
I had the opportunity from Dan Smith, the director of marketing and media, one day at Del Mar. And he said that Bobby Knight was in the Turf Club. And I said, wow, I've never met Bobby Knight. Let me run over to the Turf Club and see if I could get a chance to introduce myself to him. And there was D. Wayne Lucas, Bobby Knight, Pete Rose, Buzzy Bavasi, and Pete Rozelle, of all people. And I'm thinking, like, this is star-studded here. I didn't know what to say. But D. Wayne was dapperly dressed to the T's. He had the tie clip. He had the pocket handkerchief. He was just so out of like a fashion magazine. Let me toss up to my co-host, Bobby G. Bobby G, you remember D. Wayne Lucas and Donna Barton Brothers. Let me tell you something. As she mentioned, she was a jockey, but to me, she'll always be more than a jockey, because when D. Wayne Lucas trusted her to get the calibration of a horse that he was conditioning for a big race, he went to the best, and I say that sincerely. Donna Barton, she married a trainer, Frankie Brothers, so she'll always be Donna Barton when I refer to her, but she's been special. Bobby G, for Donna Barton, please.
I was listening to you talk, and no matter how much we follow the sport, no matter how much we analyze the sport, there is nobody in the world that's more qualified to share the insight that we're all looking to gather. And for you to receive that admiration and respect from maybe arguably one of the greatest trainers, if not the greatest trainer of all time. And as I was listening to you talk, I never wanted to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you a question, because I was just curious. When you said that the horse could feel, sense, if your attitude or if your emotions, is that something that the average person could ever grasp, that that's how sensitive the relationship is? You said that D. Wayne Lucas had the most positive mental attitude of anybody you could be around, and there's nothing more powerful than a positive mental attitude. But when you were talking about the horse feeling your attitude, feeling your emotions, is that something that the average person can relate to and understand? Because I don't think very many people watch a horse race and actually think that, well, maybe that jockey just had a rough ride or something happened in the previous race, and he or she was so upset she couldn't think straight about the next race, and that something like that could actually have something to do with the outcome of the next race. Could you share that feeling with us?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that good jockeys do is they shake that off pretty easily. So let's say that you do have a horrible trip in race number 3, and you go back out there to ride race number 4. You don't take that horrible trip with you to race number 4. You're renewed again. You're on this horse, this race. You have a new chance. That's the great thing about riding races, that every time you have another chance to win. However, it is why you'll see a rider when they get on a roll, and they win like 5 in one day, and everything's running for them and everything goes so well. And I think that's what it comes down to, is they just have that vibration. and they take that vibration with them. And it goes the other way too when you see a jockey who gets into a slump. But it also happens with the trainers. So you can walk as a jockey, you can walk into a trainer's barn who's on a roll, and all the help is happy and all the horses are happy and the trainer's happy. And then you walk into that same trainer's barn 2 weeks later after they've had 3 favorites get beat in a row, and the whole entire atmosphere has changed. And Wayne was in tune with that. He wasn't going to let a bad day or a bad race or the bad outcome of, a weekend change the atmosphere of his barn. And so I think it's not quite as easy as transferring a bad outcome in race 3 to a bad ride in race 4, but it is an energetic thing that definitely happens. And I think that, you have to keep in mind that horses are the largest domesticated animal on the planet. So think about that. They're the largest domesticated, I left one word out, prey animal on the planet. So they have predators out in the wild all around them. And so if somebody doesn't know a horse, doesn't know horses well, and they walk up to a horse and they're afraid of the horse doesn't know whether or not they're afraid of the horse or afraid of something in the environment. And so the horse automatically senses that fear and thinks, what is it that I need to be on the lookout for? Because they're a prey animal, right? And so horses have to be tuned into our emotions, because that's how they pick up on the danger signals all around them. And most horses have already agreed to this contract with us that they're going to trust us as long as we keep proving that we're going to be able to take care of them. But if for whatever reason we walk up to them with a distorted emotion, they think that has something to do with their environment, and they're not going to be quite as focused as they would be if the person who's around them is happy and calm and has a confident demeanor.
Let me ask you this. Robert, Bobby G, and I is Robert, but known in Los Angeles on the high circles as Bobby G. He has a great list of friends that know him, Bobby G. But let me ask you what we talked about last week. We were talking about Gary Stevens and all the great horses that D. Wayne Lucas had. And I lived in San Diego for 50 years. I remember when Gene Klein just gave and allotted so many great equines to D. Wayne Lucas, and they were like peanut butter and jelly. But is there anything like the Kentucky Derby in your mind? I think you're Kentucky bred yourself. I think it's the biggest race in all of America. I think every jockey wants to win the Kentucky Derby. But in your mind, describe the Kentucky Derby for us.
Well, I've lived in Kentucky since 1996. I bought my first home here. But prior to that, as you know, Felix, you mentioned my mother was a jockey, so we traveled quite a lot growing up. But Kentucky felt like home for me shortly after I moved here. And I think the thing that makes the Kentucky Derby different than any other race is that it's again, back to that energy, the vibration that goes through the crowd, right? And especially when they have the My Old Kentucky Home plays. And so it's one of the few times whenever you have this crowd of 150,000 people who have sort of the same sentiment. Like at that point in time, everybody has this reverence for the game and this respect for the race that's about to unfold. And they feel beholden to Kentucky and to horse racing. And they have this emotion of hope. And so one of the things that we've tried to do, this is 26 years for me being with NBC Sports now. And one of the things that we've tried to do is capture that moment. And after about 20 years, I finally realized we can't, because it's an emotion and you have to be there to feel it. And so anybody who's been there for the Kentucky Derby has felt it. Now take that a step higher and say you're involved with the Kentucky Derby, either as a jockey, a trainer, or as an owner. And then you realize that you're in a sacred space and that this is something that may never come along again, but you want it to. And so, yeah, it's just it's an emotion that is taken to another level for the Kentucky Derby. And the playing of My Old Kentucky Home has a lot to do with that, because that's where it all sort of comes to a head. And then, of course, when they spring the latch for the starting gate, there's another comes to a head again. And then when they cross the finish line again. But it's a whole group of people feeling the same sort of emotions.
I don't want to make your husband Frankie angry because dinner's a little bit late, but I appreciate you so much. It was a short notice. You know how I feel about you. We've been friends for a long time. We've done this before. You're so good for the NBC telecast, being on horseback, and what a thrill it is for you to go to interview a jockey or a trainer that just won the most coveted race in all of America. Let's do it again. I thank you. We'll be looking for you on the first Saturday in May on NBC.
Felix, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and especially to talk horses. And Bobby G, great hanging out with you too. Thanks, guys.
Really an honor and a treat to have the chance to spend time with you. Best of luck in all your endeavors.
You're kind. Thank you.
Donna Barton Brothers has been our guest as we fly the coop on this day. We'll exit stage right for Donna Barton and hope that Mary Rappolini could be. What's the odds that we can get Mary Rappolini? I mean, she is playing hard to get without any question, Robert.
50-50 is optimistic.
All right. Mary Rappolini, are you there? It's amazing. Most amazing thing.
No, sorry. I've been trying. I've been back here working, trying.
Did Corey Nakatani ever make it to the dance?
Nope. I've been trying.
So Corey isn't in the house yet either. So you will just go, Robert and Bobby G and I. Bobby G, Donna Barton, as we talked about last week on the radio show, and then how ironic that Serena Song would pass away the next day. I talked about Gary Stevens, and I reached out to Gary Stevens. And he was having MRIs done today, and Gary and I text back, and Nakatani, the Hall of Famer Corey Nakatani, rode Serena Song 8 times and won with her 6 times. And they won the first race, lost the second, and then they won 4 in a row going into the Kentucky Derby, which she was off the board. And I wanted to ask Corey exactly what kind of trip that she did have, because she ran against the boys everywhere. Dean Wayne, she took down the boys in all these big races. I mean, she wasn't afraid to tackle the male horses, one-on-one, look them in the eye and drill them into the ground. She ran 38 times, and she won 18 of those. She finished second 11 times, and she finished third 3 times. She garnered and earned over $3.3 million. And during that day and age, it wasn't like it was common for fillies or mares to run against the boys. There was an exception, and the exception that we talked about last week on Post Time, our second episode, and we're live from 50 Way Studios in Toledo, Ohio. The Double A is producing our show, as well as our executive producer off into his suite, looking on to our podcast and our telecast, Craig Anthony Thompson. We talked about winning colors and how, they ran her in 1988 against the boys, and she made quick work of the boys in both the Kentucky Derby as well as the Preakness, only to lose the Belmont Stakes. But D. Wayne Lucas, who just passed away, it's coming up to 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, but D. Wayne Lucas was the king of all kings and trainers before a Bob Baffert, before a Todd Pletcher. Matter of fact, Todd Pletcher was.
We got Corey.
Is that Corey Nakatani on with us?
Yes, it is. We do have Corey.
All right, let's go to Corey Nakatani, because we were just talking about you. How are you, little brother?
I'm doing good. How y'all doing?
Good. You know Bobby G, Robert, as his initial name is, but you know Bobby G, don't you?
I do know Bobby. How you been, Bobby?
All right.
Corey, it's a treat to see you again. Hope all is well with your family, and I know you're you're knee deep in your involvement with your daughter, and I hope everything is going along really, really well with her career. I know how important that is to you.
Oh yeah, it is. I just back in the day when I got hurt, I always said, God has mysterious ways of working in your life, and it's given me an opportunity to spend a lot of time with my daughter Lila and doing the show jumping stuff, and it's really been a second outlet for me. Watching her grow in the jumping world. She's won a gold medal, a silver medal, and a bronze medal so far. So she's doing great. Horses are all doing good, and I'm doing as best I can. Um, I just wanted to mention something about the passing of Serena Song and what it meant to me, what she meant to me in my career, my life was, she was small and mighty, but she had a heart of gold. She was just an amazing mare. I was fortunate enough to beat her a couple times, but at the end of the day, she always had that soft spot in my heart because she was one of the
We were
first
just
ones that
talking.
I rode that
Thank
was
you very
put me on the
much
national
for
scene.
joining us, Hall of Famer Corey Nakatani. Well deserved. We were talking, Robert and I, Bobby G and I shared that I went back and looked at the past performances, and you rode her 8 times. You won 6 times on her, and I think you
Yes,
won like 4 or 5 in a row leading up into the Kentucky Derby. And you went against the boys wherever D. Wayne Lucas placed her and pointed her to. You followed along, and I know
that's
that
correct.
you won several races at Santa Anita, and you just were leading right into the Kentucky Derby. What happened on that afternoon?
There was another horse in the race, and Mr. Lewis had another horse in there in Timber Country who they felt was, really superior in the race. So Wayne opted. I was supposed to ride Thunder Gulch in the Derby, who ended up winning the Derby, but he flew Gary in to ride Thunder Gulch and put Serena Song in the Derby because there was not a real legit speed horse. Because Wild Sin, who won the Bluegrass, was like the lone speed in the race, and he put her in there and said, "Look, you go to the lead no matter what." And I was sick that he said that, but at the end of the day, I just protected her. I knew she couldn't get the distance, but at the end of the day, she still had my heart. She gave me so many thrills, and um, the day that she passed, it was just I was very sad and cried about it. But at the end of the day, horses mean more than a lot of other people in my life. Horses mean more to me than that. So um, I just wanted to express that to people that when you have an opportunity and you're able to see a glimpse of what that filly meant to me, your life will be fulfilled.
Wow.
Robert, when I reached out to Corey, first thing he said was that I cried. And that will assure you, the lay people out there, wherever they are, wherever they might be, that these horses, filly or a mare, a colt or a horse, they mean a lot to these jockeys. And Corey, that just struck me so sentimentally strong, where that this is going back almost
30
25
or 29
years.
years, 29 years, yeah, 25. Yeah. And like I said, when I had the opportunities, I did go over there to see her at the farm. And, I'm not like a guy that hangs out in the press and does all that stuff and says, "Oh, I'm going to see so-and-so." And that, I went and seen Lava Man. I went and seen the horses that, obviously meant a lot to me. But at the end of the day, they all mean to me. You know me, Felix, very well. And not a lot of people know me at that level. But that's why I do things to take care of horses now. I'm gonna try and work with old friends and try to get one set up here in California. And I'm gonna reach out to them and try to figure out if we can get a place set up within the, and have the horse people and not only owners but the jockeys and everybody else would support an old friends of the West Coast, I believe. So I think that that is going to be my next calling. So I'm just gonna put it out there and reach out to them and hopefully we can get that in the works.
You know
You know,
something, Corey?
Robert, I talked about this, Bobby G, last week, and I said I saw a lot of races, and the colt that I thought that I saw that never won the Kentucky Derby that was outstanding to me was Point Given. But I want to spin it back to the Breeders' Cup. Out of all the years since 1984, the Breeders' Cup, and I've been a part of that since 1984. I can only tell you this. I have never seen a better ride than Corey Nakatani gave Elmhurst to win that. Where is that? Was that at Hollywood Park or Churchill Downs?
Yeah. No, that was Hollywood Park. It was for Janine. It was the second Breeders' Cup in a row that I win for Janine. We won it with Elmhurst in Canada, and then we won it the very next year at Hollywood Park. And I remember the day that I worked the horse, and he worked like 3/8 and 33, and I never really changed what I did with him. I just moved him a little closer to the rail because I felt we were going to have to be on the inside to be able to save enough ground to be able to catch him, turn it for home. He was he was an amazing horse. He had a tremendous turn of foot to him, and once I got him moving, I just didn't want to get him stopped, and he was just such an amazing horse. Janine, what a job that Janine did with those sprinters. It was something else to be seen when you seen him running.
Let me ask you this. Who was the smartest horse you ever rode?
What was that?
The smartest horse, like, the brain. Who was the smartest horse you ever rode?
You know,
We lost
the
his
funny thing
focus.
about that is that they're all very smart in their own way. And you got to listen to the signs that they give you. And when they give you the signs of what they want and how they want to run, all you got to do is stay out of their way and support what they are wanting to do and willing to do. And then good things happen. And at the end of the day, I never forced the horse to run. I never, overrode a horse to make him win. None of that comes into play. When you're the less hindrance on a horse, I don't care if you're 5 pounds overweight, but at the end of the day, if you stay out of their way, the horses, it's bred in them to be the best. They're not. Their spirit is what I think drives them, and they want to beat the other horse. So if you could figure them out and try to stay out of their way, you're going to win a lot of races.
Do you still follow the road to the Kentucky Derby, or are you still connected with what's happening to prep races the first Saturday in May as we lead into that?
No. I'll still watch them, and like I said, I used to do a little bit of the TV for FanDuel, and I had a great time doing that. But they were going into different directions, and I just decided to do stuff with my daughter. And once she turns 18, which is in a year, then maybe get back into horse racing and do those things. And like I said, I'm thinking about doing the old friends West Coast, try to find some land out here and be able to put the champions that are here in California and all over the world, not just in California, but a place for them to rest and have a place to go when they retire,
Aftercare. What a great idea. What a great concept. What a great individual you are, Corey Nakatani. We wish you the best. Get on your way. Be safe. Both hands on the driving wheel, and we'll catch up with you. But you are truly a Hall of Famer. And when I look back at the stake races you won just at Del Mar, it's mind-boggling. Take care of my little brother, and I will talk with you very, very soon.
All right, Felix. See you. All right, Reggie. Talk to y'all later. Take care.
Nice to see you, Corey. Be
Be
safe
safe.
and be well.
All right,
Cheers.
That's Corey Nakatani, Hall of Famer, as we zero in. I mean, we're all Hall of Fame. We're all about Hall of Fame here on Post Time. I want to shout out to 50 Way Studios in Toledo, Ohio. Anthony A. is directing, and Craig Anthony Thompson, as I said. Bobby G. is up in Los Angeles. He's in Palm Springs today, but he originates out of Los Angeles. Mary Rappolini, she's playing hard to get, but sooner or later, we're going to get her on. Is she there by any chance, Double A?
Nope, I keep trying.
We keep trying, and
keep
you know who we need to get on as we shift our sights. And let me just say this: we got 45 days until the Kentucky Derby. This week, we focus our attention on the Jeff Ruby down at Turfway Park. as well as the Louisiana Derby down in the fairgrounds in New Orleans. And then next week, we got the Arkansas Derby, we got the Florida Derby, and we got the UA Derby. And then the following week, the first in April, we have the Bluegrass from Keeneland, the Santa Anita Derby from Santa Anita, and the Wood Memorial from New York. Now, there are 10 prep races left. We've run several of them, and I, for one, believe that we have yet to see the Derby winner. What about you, Bobby G? Are you still staying with your gut and with what you feel is the right horse to win the Derby, the right colt, I should say, to win the Derby?
You know, I always try my best to be prepared to engage you in the most intelligent horse racing conversations possible because you are an aficionado of the sport. So I do still believe that what I've seen to date, that's the way I formulated my opinion. But as you just so eloquently pointed out, there's a whole bunch of races left to run. And I do believe that there's a horse running in Louisiana, another Chad Brown horse that I know I don't think the morning lines are out or something, but I think that this horse, from what I've been able to put together, I think this is supposedly Chad Brown has gone on record as saying that a lot of his 2-year-olds, he had a problem in his barn with maybe some unhealthiness with some of his 2-year-olds. And maybe his 2-year-olds didn't run as well as maybe you would expect Chad Brown horses to run. And he believes that he's going to have 2 or 3 3-year-olds. Obviously, as we get to the Kentucky Derby, he believes that he's going to have 2 or 3 serious contenders for this year's Kentucky Derby. Paladin is one. And I'm embarrassed to say I can't think of the name of the horse right now. But the horse is going to be run by Flavien Prat, and I'm pretty sure it's going to run this.
You got Paladin at number 2. You got Narrowly, ridden by Johnny Vasquez.
Who's the bottom
for number
horse?
1?
Who's the bottom horse?
Number 10.
What's the name?
Let's go back down to number 10. Give me a second. I'm at number 1.
It's with Flavien Prat. It's Chad Brown.
That's the leaderboard.
Oh, he was number 2. Yeah, he was number 2.
Okay.
Fabian is number 2.
Okay, I'd like to go on record as saying that I don't have a strong opinion, but I do believe that horse is live, and I do believe that that's a serious Derby contender. Obviously, we'll have a chance to see that horse or that colt run this weekend, and there's a real good chance that horse might go off as the morning line. That horse is going to be really heavily bet, and I really believe I'm dying to watch that race because I think that's a serious contender for the Kentucky Derby.
Yep, Flavien has been riding lights out no matter where he lands. He won 5 races over the last weekend on one single day back in New York.
In Virginia, I think it was.
Wherever he landed, he's hot. He's got it going on.
He knows where the winner's circle is, Felix.
He knows how to stay out of trouble too. I know that we're in the midst of some great happenings, but none bigger than what's going to take place tonight in the second playing game. And we're going to be joined with Landon Douglas, my man, Landon Douglas, who's going to be here in the studio ready to talk about March Madness. And I know that you have your eyes and ears open for what's going to happen. I was a little disappointed in the selection show on Sunday. Only one Mountain West team, Utah State, got in. They did not get in. San Diego State did not get in. Colorado State did not get in, and New Mexico did not get in. And that opted for San Diego State and Brian Dutcher saying that, you know what, we're not going to the NIT, we're not going anywhere. There's my man, Landon Douglas. You ready for what's going to transpire 9:15 tomorrow in the East?
Yes, sir, Felix. I'm ready. How about you?
I am. Is there any games that, I got the whole lineup for Thursday, and there's 16 games on Thursday, Landon, and there is 16 on Friday. Were there any games that really jumped off the page to you?
Yes, there was one specifically. I would say Ohio State versus TCU. That front court for OSU, Bruce Thornton. I mean, he's a real playmaker. I feel like once March is different. We saw what OSU was able to do against Iowa. We saw what they were able to do against Michigan, only losing by 4. I was watching that game. It was a nail biter for me, at least. But that TCU defense is strong. They versed great opponents this year. I feel like that game will come down to the wire.
Jamie Dixon is a close personal friend, head basketball at TCU. And I was watching that line movement, and I was quite surprised, to tell you the truth, that Ohio State's a 2.5-point favorite. I think it's a coin toss. I think both these teams are really equal. Either one can win. That's how this game sets up in my mind. What's game number 2 for you?
Game number 2, I would say, with the news I just heard recently, I would have to say Louisville versus USF. Macau Brown Jr. just got ruled out for this game. Louisville's freshman guard, which I think that was a huge loss for them. That was coming down for me. I thought even with them, it might be a struggle. Louisville has struggled a bit this year, especially recently, I would say. And USF, they've had experience. Their guard play, I feel like all around is just perfect for me. I like them to upset Louisville first round for me. What do you think, Felix?
This is one of the games I'm really zeroing in. I have an interest because I, for one, definitely feel that the University of South Florida basketball coach will be the next coach at Syracuse. I think this guy in his 3rd or 4th year as the Bulls head coach down there in Tampa has done a great job. His offense is just very, very, very good. I don't know what to make of Louisville. Louisville's been up and they've been down. I don't know if they can sustain the patient attack of the Bulls from South Florida. Once again, 4.5 is the point spread. 164.5 is the total. So the prognosticators believe, Landon, that this game is going to be high scoring. And what is your third game?
My third game, I would have to say, maybe others don't think it, but I think St. Louis versus Georgia. Those two high-powered, fast offenses. To be honest, I don't think there's really much defense to say here. I think it's just high scoring. You can say the same for Wisconsin High Point. They're both top 10 in scoring offense. High Point averages 90 points a game, which is insane to think. I think both of those games will be shootout games. What do you think?
I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. Georgia has scored over 90 points in 8 straight games. St. Louis has the 3-point shooter marksman. I, for one, believe Georgia didn't do enough to get into the tournament. I thought that San Diego State and some other teams were better than them coming out west, but, the SEC got a lot of preference. I'm not so sure about the SEC, tell you the truth. Alabama doesn't scare me now with the drug bust of their star player who was ruled off the campus for having 1 pound of marijuana and over $10,000 in cash and a scale in his apartment. Doesn't give the Roll Tide, it gives Roll Tide a whole different meaning of rolling one up. I think Robert is still with us. Robert, are you still there on this great day?
I'm doing the best I can to follow along with all this conversation. My first question is, when you were talking about St. Louis and Georgia, there's so many great stories in the NC2A tournament. you could fill up, I don't know what you could fill up, the Grand Canyon. But the kid that plays for St. Louis, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to me is one of the great stories in the NC2A tournament. And even though as people who like to watch it, people who like to analyze it, people who like to gamble on it, there's human interest stories. And maybe our guest could just briefly touch upon his story, because his story, I think, is one of the most interesting and entertaining stories in the whole tournament. He played last year for Indiana State, and all of a sudden he became a network sensation. And now he's with St. Louis. And, when you look at this kid, you say to yourself, okay, and then you watch him play, and then you say, that's not really possible that this kid is that good of a basketball player. Do you have any thoughts on that particular subject?
I haven't seen it, but I will definitely follow. But you talk about storylines. How about the manager for McNeese State with the big boom box when he leads his team out? I mean, this is the second year in a row. He has gotten over 1 million followers on TikTok and on Twitter just from leading the team out. He has it strapped around his neck. I've been in sports my whole entire life, just like you, Robert. Maybe Landon is finding out that early in life he is drawn to sports. But there has never been something more exciting to me than March Madness. I lived for 3 o'clock on Sunday. I looked at my watch. It was 2:45, 2:50, 2:52. And I'm thinking, like, am I having a baby here? I mean, I am so excited about it. It gets into all the venues that the first round happened to be. San Diego happens to be a first round site. Then we go to Houston, Chicago, San Jose for the regionals. But all these sites around the country will kick it off. And what I was looking at Thursday and Friday, there's Thursday and Friday games, and we gave.
Felix, you didn't even have to wait 1 second. Last night's game with Texas was unbelievable.
That was crazy. I have to agree with you, Robert.
I mean, March Madness, like you were saying, Felix, March Madness delivers. You only had to wait to the second game. The first game was incredible too, but the second game, literally at the buzzer, and that's what everybody. Of all the things that excite people about this tournament, and you seem to be as enthusiastic as anybody I've ever heard talk about it, that's what everybody looks for. They look for those shots at the end of the game that separate winning and losing, and teams that can't win, and teams that can't lose. There's nothing more entertaining, Felix. I share your emotions and I share your feelings.
Let me tell you this. Sean Miller, head basketball coach, University of Texas. His father was my mentor growing up in Western Pennsylvania. John Miller, who led Blackhawk to 6 state championships in nearby Beaver Falls. He also coached Kobe Bryant in the McDonald's Classic game at Pittsburgh Civic Arena. We have remained friends forever. Both of his sons are Division I basketball coaches. Sean, who left Xavier to take the Texas job, and Archie, who got fired by Indiana, took the Rhode Island job. And could you imagine being a parent of 2 boys that are both Division I basketball coaches? But I gotta say, Texas didn't deserve to get into the big dance either. That's the SEC again. Georgia, Texas, and if Auburn would have got in, I would have really been irate. Bruce Pearl.
You mean Bruce Pearl pounding on the podium wasn't enough to get his son into the tournament where they definitely didn't belong?
I think the fact that there was a conversation of Auburn even getting in over, for example, Miami of Ohio. They might have had 0 quad 1 wins, but if you go 31-0 in a regular season, I think there should be no debate.
That's a whole nother can of worms, Miami of Ohio. As a basketball fan, which obviously you are, that's one of the fascinating. There would have been more controversy if Miami, Ohio doesn't get into the tournament. If they put Auburn into the tournament on Miami of Ohio, I'm not sure people might not stop watching it,
Yeah.
Well, they said Miami of Ohio didn't have a quad one win. You know, you can only beat who you play. The schedule's made years in advance. And so, you know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that the teams you played weren't up to stuff. But let me tell you something. The MAC is no slouch.
Mm-hmm.
Akron will prove that tomorrow. Akron is as good as any team in the country. This is a coach that's been in that program for 6 years, and he's gotten them to the dance the last 4 years. He has built a tremendous program, the MAC, with Kent State and Toledo and Miami, Ohio. Don't go to sleep on the MAC, I want to tell you, but I got some great picks coming up. I can't wait tomorrow. I just text earlier in the morning. I just text Jamie Dixon to wish him good luck. I text my man Mick Cronin from UCLA, good luck. I know that they are so inside themselves trying to make sure that they relay everything they possibly can to their teams. And for bonus coverage, we're going to do a 30-minute, the road to March Madness with Landon Douglas and yours truly. Robert, we'll let you fly for right now. We will check in with you. A great job today, Bobby G, on post time. This was hot. The only thing barring us from being a perfect show is what the heck is happening with Mary Rappolini. I just can't believe it. And we'll get to.
I think it's our most fascinating storyline. When
sure
will Mary
is.
finally appear? I mean, the whole world is waiting to hear what she has to say.
And you know what? We need her. We need her next week because the Arkansas Derby is in town. And
Our producer will be on the phone immediately, and we'll find out. Guys, a treat to be able to spend some time with you, Felix. It's awesome. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Look forward to the next opportunity.
yeah, your best show by far, my man. What great color you provided us today. Want to thank Donna Barton Brothers. One of my favorite people in this land, former jockey, workout girl for the late D. Wayne Lucas. She conditioned and she worked out a lot of great equines for the great D. Wayne Lucas. Corey Nakatani, Hall of Fame jockey. Our executive producer, Craig Anthony Thompson. Our director and producer, Anthony A. Landon Douglas chiming in with what he loves best. He looks like $1 million. Just got out of college class today and ran over to the studio. And we're coming back with the best 30 minutes of any March Madness special from the 50 Way Studios here in Toledo, Ohio. I'm in California. You're out there somewhere. Thanks for joining us. We'll check in with you next week on Post Time. Subscribe to 50 Way Studios. Be a part of this podcast every single week as we're down to 45 days until the Kentucky Derby, and we'll be your ears and eyes, your feet, and everything else on the way to Churchill Downs the first Saturday of May. Until then, I'm Felix Taverna. Thank you very much for joining us.